America has a product it has been selling for 200 years. It is not oil, it is not military power, it is not even democracy. It is the underdog story. The broke kid who made it, the outsider who beat the system, the nobody who became a somebody. America packages this story, exports it globally, and sells it back to its own people at full price every single generation. America does not actually want underdogs to win. America wants underdogs to almost win, to struggle beautifully, to give everyone watching a reason to feel hopeful without actually threatening the order of anything. And nobody in the history of this country proves that more completely, more brutally, than a kid from Brownsville, Brooklyn named Michael Gerard Tyson. Call me the pun guy. And today, we're not just talking about Mike Tyson, we're putting America's favorite story on trial. Because by the end of this video, you may never watch a comeback story the same way again. America loves a fighter, just not one who wins the war. Let us go back, way back. Before the belts, before the tattoo, before the controversy. 1966, Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York City. At the time, Brownsville is competing hard for the title of most dangerous neighborhood in America, not a metaphor. An actual statistic. Murder rates, poverty rates, incarceration rates. Brownsville was topping charts that nobody wanted to be on. Into this world comes Michael Gerard Tyson. His father is gone before Mike can remember him. His mother, Lorna, is trying to hold a life together with almost nothing. Mike is small for his age. He has a lisp. He carries pigeons on the rooftop of his building because birds, unlike people, do not judge where you come from. By age 13, Mike Tyson has been arrested 38 times. 38 times. Not because he is evil, because he is hungry, he is angry, he is invisible, and the only way invisible people get seen is when they break something. He ends up at the Tryon School for Boys, a juvenile detention facility upstate, and this is where the story pivots. A 72-year-old man named Cus D'Amato sees a 13-year-old kid from Brownsville, and he doesn't see a criminal. He sees a future heavyweight champion. Cus D'Amato, one of the greatest boxing trainers who ever lived, had already guided Floyd Patterson to the heavyweight championship. But when he watched young Tyson move, the speed, the explosiveness, the raw, terrifying power in a body that hadn't even finished growing, Cus said something people would repeat for decades. That boy, if he wants it, will be the youngest heavyweight champion in history. He was right. But being right in America often costs you more than being wrong. Here is what the documentaries skip over. Here is what the highlight reels never show you. For the first time in Mike Tyson's life, someone treated him like he mattered before he had earned anything. And America, watching from the outside, was already building the narrative, already writing the script, already casting its roles. The poor black boy from the ghetto, the wise old white savior, and a story that would make the whole country feel good about itself. The only problem is that nobody asked Mike Tyson which role he wanted to play. They gave him the whole world, without the paperwork to keep it. Now, slow down with me, because what I'm about to say is going to make some of you uncomfortable, and that discomfort is precisely the point. America has a story it tells itself, a story about hard work, redemption, and the self-made man rising from nothing. It is the most powerful story in the history of the world. It has sold more books, made more movies, and won more elections than any other idea on the planet. It is called the American Dream. And yes, it's real, but nobody puts this on the poster. The American Dream has a clause buried in the fine print. You are allowed to struggle publicly. You are allowed to almost make it. You are celebrated when you are climbing. But the moment you stop being the underdog and start being the top dog, America doesn't know what to do with you. By 1986, Mike Tyson is 20 years old, and he is the heavyweight champion of the world, the youngest man in history to hold that title. And America absolutely loves him. Sports Illustrated loves him. The talk shows love him. Kids in suburban neighborhoods who have never been within 100 miles of Brooklyn love him. Everyone has a Tyson poster. Everyone wants to be Tyson. But watch what happens next. Watch carefully. In 1988, Tyson knocks Michael Spinks down and out in 91 seconds. The fight is over before most people finish their popcorn. He is now so dominant, so overwhelming, so completely unchallengeable that the sport of boxing has a problem. He is too good. And in America, there is nothing more uncomfortable than a man from the bottom who becomes too good to contain. So what does America do? It does what it always does. It starts rewriting the script. The story shifts. The framing changes. The same qualities that made Tyson a hero, the ferocity, the rage, the barely contained violence, now become evidence of something else. Something dangerous. Something that needs to be managed, controlled, reduced. He is no longer the scrappy kid from Brownsville beating the odds. He is now a threat. Sit with that word for a moment. Threat. Because nothing about Mike Tyson fundamentally changed between 1986 and 1989. He was just as powerful, just as explosive, still a product of Brownsville, Brooklyn. The only thing that changed? He stopped being convenient. He stopped being a story that made America feel generous. He became a story that made them nervous. Between 1988 and 1990, the machinery starts. Don King, a promoter whose own fighters sued him repeatedly in court for financial mismanagement, gets control of Tyson's management. Tyson, who has no father figure since Cuss died in 1985, who has no financial education, who has been surrounded his entire life by people who want something from him, is being emptied out while the cameras are still rolling. Cus D'Amato had a wall around Mike Tyson. Not a cruel wall, a protective one. A wall that said, "This boy's genius is not for sale." When Cus died, the wall came down, and the vultures were very, very patient. In boxing, they say everyone has a plan until they get hit. In Mike Tyson's case, everyone had a plan. He just wasn't the one writing it. Now, I know what you were thinking, and I respect it. You're thinking, he made his own choices. He had money, fame, the best training in the world, and he squandered it. You cannot blame America for Mike Tyson's decisions. That's a fair point. It deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. A real answer. Yes, Mike Tyson made choices. Some of them catastrophic. The 1992 criminal conviction, the sexual assault case involving Desiree Washington, is not a footnote. It is a fact. A woman's life was affected permanently, and nothing in this video changes that or minimizes it. But what I am asking you to examine is not whether Tyson was perfect. He wasn't. I am asking you to examine the system that produced him, exploited him, and then acted surprised when it all fell apart. Here's what we know about the conditions that shape human beings. Children who experience severe early childhood trauma develop differently. Their threat response systems are calibrated differently. Their ability to trust authority is compromised. Impulse control becomes a constant, exhausting battle that most people who grew up safe will never understand. This is not an excuse. This is neuroscience. And we know that when you take a child like this and place him in an environment where the only skill that is valued, celebrated, and monetized is the ability to inflict controlled violence, you are not rehabilitating him. You are pointing his damage in a profitable direction. And here's the part of this story that I need you to understand. This isn't just Mike Tyson's story. Muhammad Ali, the most celebrated sportsman in American history. Beloved now, universally beloved. They put his face on stamps. They named arenas after him. They called him the greatest, which he was. But let's go back to 1967. Ali refuses to be drafted into the Vietnam War. He says, and these are some of the most important words ever spoken by an American athlete, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." America's response? They strip him of his heavyweight title. They revoke his boxing license. They threaten him with 5 years in federal prison. They call him a coward, a traitor, a disgrace. This is the same country that now sells his image on motivational posters. The same country. And Jim Brown, one of the greatest American football players ever, walked away from the NFL at his absolute peak to advocate for Black economic empowerment. America never quite forgave him either. You see the pattern? It is not subtle once you start seeing it. America loves its underdogs when they are performing, when they are winning and smiling and making everyone feel good and proving that the system works, when they stay in the lane that has been built for them. But the moment they step outside that lane, the moment they become political or complicated, too powerful, too rich, or simply too human, America discovers that its love was always conditional. And here is the cruelest part of the whole thing. America always lets them back in eventually, once they have been humbled, once they are old enough, broken enough, or quiet enough again to be non-threatening. Mike Tyson at 20, heavyweight champion of the world? Terrifying. Mike Tyson at 58, fighting on Netflix, a meme, a legend, a punchline, and a grandfather all at once? Beloved. The redemption arc completes, but only once the threat is fully neutralized. America did not give Mike Tyson a second chance. It gave him a second act. Those are very different things. One is about him, the other is about the audience. We're almost at the final bell, But before we get there, I need you to do something uncomfortable. I need you to think about yourself in this story. Not Mike Tyson, you. When you were watching the highlight reels, young Tyson knocking out opponent after opponent, the Brownsville story, the Customato mentorship. Were you rooting for him? Most people were. I was. And then when the narrative shifted, tabloids, divorce on national television, the word monster circulating, did something change in how you felt about him? Be honest. Here's the truth. You didn't change because you got new information. You changed because the story changed. Same man, same childhood, same 38 arrests, same Customato mentorship, same boxing genius. But the story shifted, and so did your feelings. That right there is the whole game. We think we're watching stories. We're actually inside them. We feel exactly what the narrative points us at. And when the machine that produces narratives has specific interests, for specific outcomes, for specific people, we move exactly in the direction it points. Every time. The question isn't whether Mike Tyson was a hero or a villain. Good people hurt others. Bad people survive things that would break anyone. The categories are not as clean as the headlines need them to be. The question is, who decided which story you were told, and why? Because right now, somewhere, there's another Mike Tyson. Different name, different sport, different city, rising out of something they were never supposed to rise out of. America is currently in love with them. The narrative is perfect. The story is irresistible, and the machine is already taking notes, already identifying the moment when the story will need to change. The only variable is whether this time, armed with the pattern, knowing how the story ends before it ends, anyone in the audience decides not to play along. But that requires the hardest thing possible, looking at itself. And honestly, that's a bigger fight than anything Tyson ever had. Mike Tyson is not a saint. He has done real harm. That is part of his record. No biography changes that arithmetic. But the way this country built him, used him, discarded him, and then selectively rehabilitated him, that sequence is a confession. A confession about what America actually believes versus what it claims to believe. We claim to believe in the underdog. What we actually believe in is the performance of the underdog. We don't want the kid from Brownsville to actually escape Brownsville and thrive on his own terms. Powerful, wealthy, too big to be patronized. We want him to win just enough to make us feel good, and then stay grateful, stay humble, stay accessible. The moment the underdog becomes powerful enough to stop needing the crowd, that's when the crowd becomes a mob. Mike Tyson committed one unforgivable sin in America's eyes. Not the bite, not the conviction, not the tigers. He committed the sin of becoming genuinely free and refusing to perform gratitude for a country that hadn't actually freed him. He was too much, too complicated, too real for the genre he'd been placed in. The underdog story only has room for two acts, rise and fall. Mike Tyson tried to write a third act. America kept closing the book until he was old enough and diminished enough to be placed back on the shelf as a classic. Here's the truth this whole story has been circling. The American dream, as sold, is a staircase. But there's a velvet rope at the top. And who holds the rope? Who decides when you've climbed enough? That's the question the dream was very carefully designed to never answer. Mike Tyson found the rope, and the country that handed him the ticket acted shocked when he got there. That is the magic trick. That is the game. And it's still running. Tyson once said something I've been thinking about ever since I started working on this story. The people who were cheering the loudest, they weren't cheering for me. They were cheering for what I did for them, for how I made them feel. The day I stopped doing that, I stopped existing to them. He paused, then said, I was never Iron Mike to myself. That was their name for me. I was just Mike. And Mike had a hard time. A child from Brownsville, 38 arrests before he could drive, made into a weapon by a system that discarded him, rescued by one old man who saw something worth saving, used by another system to prove the dream was real, destroyed by that same system when the dream got too real, and still here, still talking, still, somehow, Mike. The machine that made him is still running, with new names in the hopper, new stories loading. The crowd is already cheering, and the only question that matters, the one I'll leave you with, are you watching the story? Or are you in it? Think about that. You probably lived through the Tyson years. I only studied them. So I want to know, where did I get it wrong? Point to the moment and explain why. I read every comment. And before you go, give me one name, alive or dead, whose story America told completely wrong. Just one. Make it count. Mike Tyson was only the beginning. There are dozens of stories like this. People everyone thinks they understand, but almost nobody actually does. Subscribe now if you want to see the next story before everyone else finds it. We're going through them one by one.